been sending to these institutions.
It is so ordered, Mr. Speaker. You have ordered.
Mary?
Thank you. You've touched on sports academies. Honorable nominee, 31 academies of sports are earmarked to commence this financial year, 24-25. They were advertised, but again cancelled. Honorable nominee, we are at a time when Kenyans are tired of too much talking. Kenyans want to see action, not what has been witnessed, PR, managing of members and representatives of the people. I want you to tell Kenyans, if you succeed in this nomination to the ministry, how long will it take you to advertise for the commencement of the sports academies? And these academies are being funded by the sports fund. I happen to be a member in that committee. And you have said that it is possible to get partnerships even to support that endeavor. So tell Kenyans when we will see the sports academies commence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To Honorable Murkomen, we've worked with him in this Transport Committee, and I want to ask him, you have talked about the Chan 2025 and 2027, but I didn't hear you mention anything about the stadium in Meru being used, because the stadium was done for over R1 billion shillings, and already it has not been even handed over. The running track is coming out. And the youth who come to leagues, they spend over R1 million shillings just in courses run by FKF for training and all that. But in return, they do not get anything. And then they pay 60,000 to join leagues. And after joining leagues, they have to pay to use the stadium, 15,000 shillings. And I believe it's all over. So my question to you, Honorable Murkomen, is what are you going to do about the youth? It's not just football. It's all sports which we need the youth to be involved. And as well, the same Sports Kenya, which did Meru Kinoru Stadium, and it's a very big stadium, I believe you've been there, demolished our police station in the stadium, demolished the ACC's office, and promised to give 42 million to build new ones, where your two predecessors, if you are confirmed, Honorable Ambassador Amina, she ignored it. Honorable Ababu Namamba, when he came to Parliament, he says, yes, as soon as funds are available, he will give. So I want to know from you if that one for Kinoru, what you will do. And we've got even another stadium in Maua, which is waterlogged. We've got another one in Kobo. It's not there. And in Timau, and many other places.
You are making a speech. Yes, yes, Murugara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, talk about Standia. The Chuka Stadium is also not complete. Talk about your previous ministry of roads. Tharaka-Nithi is the home of stored roads, the most ugly of them all, including Chakariga Marimanti. You need to comment on that one. Then a comment on how you fed sports persons, because I had a young man who actually went all the way to Rwanda on the high jump, came back. I pleaded with your predecessor to meet him and fed him, the PSC Sports. I received the cold shoulders and nobody did any of that. What is the policy you're likely to have as regards the feting of sports persons? Young people, actors or artists, they are occupying us because they're not happy. They are doing all this work, but their royalties are not being paid. What are you likely to do about improvement on payment of royalties for these artists, including what benefit Kenya gets from all these nice movies we see internationally with the animal world, National Geographic, animal films, wildlife. What benefit does Kenya get from all this? Because this is where we should be selling our property and receiving payment for. Thank you.
Nominee, answer those three.
Mr. Speaker, again, I'll try to summarize. On the Honorable Daoud's Chan, 2025, yes, we are prepared, and I would love to get a brief whether Kinoro Stadium is one of the beneficiaries in terms of either training or playing. I know, of course, Kinoro Stadium. I've even addressed a rally there, the famous rally before. And you speak to the same things I talked about. I told you about standards. A county starts a stadium, they build. Sometimes it is a money-minting project. There is no intention to complete, or even it's completed, it is shoddy. It is not just Kinoro alone. All the stadium across the country. There was the case of Kericho. They finished it and it was coming out. Machakos the same. There were many other places across the country. That is why it's important to put in place standards that you can measure against, so that if you don't achieve those standards, it is easy to even prosecute the contractor, because there is international standard adopted locally. And I promise you, that will be my greatest priority. And I hope I can do that within 3 months, because I have had a conversation and bring it to this house, so that this parliament and parliament can be able to pass regulations that will make sure that standards of sports facilities are adhered to. I also want to say that on the question of your demolished DCC office and the chief's office, if I look at the money you're asking, that if we speak, if also Honorable Kindiki is approved, this government is one government. We can tell Interior, please find other resources. The DCC office, and Honorable Kindiki is not just your neighbor; is your friend. So we can be able to sort that issue, God willing. The third issue is that on the Chuka Stadium, I think also I was briefed that it's not yet complete. We need to just make sure that we complete now within the standards, with the required standards, so that we don't also complete hurriedly, but in a shoddy manner. Sorry for Chakarika Marimanti. It's my pet subject. I was there with your senator then to launch it in 2014. And the biggest problem as our country, and I pity my successor in this sense, that you have a pending bill of about 165 billion for road construction. I don't know what we are going to do, because this is not just a ministry problem, it's also a budgetary problem. And when I see that Finance Act failed, and then the other Finance Act is also facing challenges to another gap of another 200 billion. I think we need to be serious as a country. If we really want this infrastructure, we must be able to raise our own resources and support the infrastructure sector. Unfortunately, or fortunately, our honorable member here, if he's approved, will be the Minister of Finance. I hope he will be able to solve that problems, because he also has tolled roads in the Sori Road in Homa Bay. In Migori, in Homa Bay, sorry. Mr. Speaker, on the question of the particular student, I will be very deliberate, very personal to solve individual problems. I know athletics, you can have, do you know there are countries that travel with only one athlete? The whole federation goes with one athlete.
Mozambique did so in more than 4 Olympics.
Yes, so we are lucky as a country.
She always came back with a gold medal.
Yes,
Maria
Mutola, yes, 800 meters. So, Mr. Speaker, we meet that person individually. They are very important. By the time they are reaching that level, I am ready to meet them within the first 1 week when I go to office. And George, being my senior honorable, should be able to bring them.
The nominee has been responding like he has already been approved. He's just said when I go to office, he is not used the word if at all.
I have used so many times.
Hearing him say, if I'm approved.
Yes. Should I be approved if I am approved, Mr. Speaker?
Mr.
Speaker,
go at you.
There is a problem with the royalties issues, Mr. Speaker, for our our musicians and performing arts. Mr. Speaker, that responsibility, it's very important that we sort out corruption in the CMOs. The people who have been given the contract to collect, we should not give them a free hand to collect and distribute without government having a view of what, Mr. Speaker, is being collected. And I think this is an issue Parliament should take up seriously. I know it's not in my, it will not be in the ministry that I've been proposed to. It is in the arts and culture, in the gender ministry, but it is something that I have been following personally. And I hope that KECOBO, the Kenya Copyright Board, will be a bit more serious. There is a lot of corruption-related issues have been raised insofar as identification of the CMOs and, Mr. Speaker, distribution of those resources. People must be able to earn from their sweat, Mr. Speaker, and I hope they will be supported. On the film industry, I know it's part of creative industry in the ministry that I've been proposed to serve if I am approved. Mr. Speaker, I have been told that the law that governs this sector is a 1963 law. Mr. Speaker, the association itself and the policy is also an old policy. Again, I've received a representation by many people who say, if you are approved, please organize the first meeting. I am even told that insofar as filming our wildlife, the preference goes to foreign filming companies that come to film, and the local companies here do not get access to the, and they're getting billions of money, Mr. Speaker. There is no accountability or transparency as to how much they are able to live in our country. This is an area that we must register all the filmmakers when they come to our country, but we must also facilitate our own filmmakers to be able to benefit from our own animals, Mr. Speaker, in our national parks and game reserves. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Owen,
thank
one
you very much.
question, followed by Robert, one question, Mule, one question, Raso, one question.
My one question, Honorable Speaker. In
that order.
Kipchumba Murkomen, you're my good friend, you know, but that notwithstanding.
Causing with the nominee.
Okay, I said notwithstanding. You know, you've mentioned study all over Kenya, but you've not mentioned any in the North Coast. Unfortunately, this government has never invested anything in the North Coast in terms of Stadia. And you know, the coast in its own would be a very good place for sports. Even parliamentary games are coming to coast, but where will they play? You know, because we have no. So as you take, if you are given this opportunity, would you consider investing in Stadia in the lower coast to promote the youth there, where there's immense talent in terms of football and other things, but it has never been tapped because of lack of infrastructure? I thank you.
Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, I just want to mention one thing that I've heard you mention here about growing talents from schools. Maybe one of the reasons that this fails is because the capitation given for activities in school is totally inadequate, and that is under the Ministry of Education. So maybe you can talk to your counterpart, if approved. Just one question. We've seen delegations going for sports activities, international sports activities, where the officials, that is government, officers, carry huge delegations and, are living lavishly. Whereas the athletes and players are actually sometimes even stranded at airports. Can you tell Kenyans what you will do so that this kind of situation that embarrasses this country does not recur?
Mule.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Nominee Murkomen, if you are approved by this House to be the seers of youth, creative economy, sports, I just want to look at the youth right now who are part and parcel of you, because I've seen your CV, you are part of Millennium. And then the army you have talked about cogency. What new programs you will bring on board to accommodate them to work with you in this ministry?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Murkomen, my issue is about land for sports. If you move around Kenya, you find a lot of development. And even when you go around our counties and constituencies, we want to grow the talent of youth in either athletics or even other sports, whether it's rugby, football, hockey. But there are no pitches. People build everything, and then the youth, sometimes they play on the road. So going forward, I want to ask you if you will come up with even a cabinet paper or a white paper to suggest that counties or even constituencies must put so much land available so that you can develop pitches, small stadia, not necessarily the big stadiums that will cost a lot of money. And finally, Marsabit and other projects that are actually behind schedule, partially they are developed, and those structures, if they are going to be used, might collapse. You can comment on that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Of regions, especially the ASAL areas. Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Owen.
Kilifi is not ASAL?
It is. Part of Kilifi is ASAL, Mr. Speaker.
Not ASAL.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Speaker, but also in Kilifi itself, we need to work together to make sure we achieve this. I think the key thing is the standard of a stadium you have in a county, and which other pitches, including community training grounds, can be established, so that then, and which are going to be done by counties and what can be done by national government. And even after they have been constructed, what is the maintenance policy? Who is going to maintain? I think that once we have that policy, we have a way of sustaining those facilities. And Mr. Speaker, I totally agree with Honorable Mbui that the capitation, the problem is that we consider physical education, sports, Mr. Speaker, as a luxury, as an additional activity which can be done or not be done. We forget that that can be the quickest way of developing our people. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to have a serious conversation with the Minister of Education to make sure that we support sports activities deliberately. Luckily, the Sports Fund has been supporting sports activities like the National Football Championship. Sports Fund has been chipping in, but we need a structured way. In fact, in some countries, the Minister of Sports would be combined together with education as one ministry, with one department being the sports, for structured working relationship between the two departments. And I think even without that being structured to be one ministry, we need to work together with one government to see how sports is going to, how we are going to use our education institutions. By the way, I saw yesterday a number of Olympic winners, swimming and so forth, are in various schools in Europe. They keep, the commentator is saying, oh, this one has gone to this school in Europe, that has gone to this school in Europe, this is a student in this university. This should be the case. Schools and the university should be the breeding ground for our talents, and that is where they should be located. Mr. Speaker, on the delegation going to international sports, I think that my ministry will take, if I am approved, Mr. Speaker, my office will take a serious, Mr. Speaker, concerned, and make sure that we follow through the list of the people who are traveling, so that essential people can only travel. And if there are extra people who want to travel at their own cost, there is no problem. I also very careful not to call people joyriders, because I saw a friend of mine was being accused of having gone to Paris with their daughter, only to find out that he didn't travel using public money and the daughter didn't travel using public money. So sometimes we must get the facts. Usually MPs...
The most offensive one was when people called Kipchoge Keino a joyrider to Rio. It is the father of our athletics. In fact, if you are confirmed, you should guarantee this country to buy Keino a ticket to go to every Olympics until he gives up.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. What people don't realize also is that some of the officials go to the Olympics not to just go and watch. That is where you are scouting for potential investors in the area and partnerships. So there are people who go with specific roles to ensure that you engage in improving and getting investors. Some of the members of parliament also travel to these international games because they provide their oversight responsibility, but also they appreciate what's happening. When they come back here, they are able also to pass necessary laws and support the budgets for those athletes. So it is not always obvious, rather obvious, that everybody is a joyrider, but we will make sure that there are no joyriders using public resources. Remember also, Mr. Speaker, that some countries pay for their funds. They pay for the people who are going, the cheering squad. But Mr. Speaker, because of our limitation of resources, we need to work with the private sector. The private sector to sponsor them. Our big corporations should be able to sponsor the people who are going to cheer our teams, because it's also important to go with a cheering squad if it's necessary. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Honorable Mule, I am very happy that he is asking a very pertinent question. In the youth sector, what am I going to do differently to make sure that our youth get jobs? First, let me say this, Mr. Speaker, it's an embarrassment that as a country, and this should collectively prick our conscience, that the budget for youth department, for core functions of the youth department, for an entire year is 51 million shillings. That is a shame, Mr. Speaker. In fact, when I was looking at the budget, I was asking myself, am I being set up to just go and sit in an office where you are not going to deliver anything to the youth of this country? How you budget is demonstrating your priorities, because if you really want to sort out youth issues, we must put resources for youth resources. You will remember, Mr. Speaker, after the post-election violence is when a serious discussion, and you were part of the negotiating team for the coalition government and for peace. You remember one of the discussions was, what are we going to do with the youth? And that's how Mzee Kibaki's government came up with Youth Fund, and they came up also with National Youth Council, and they came up with all those youth initiatives. You remember, Mr. Speaker, the youth ministry at that time had about 10 billion for implementing projects. Now the youth department has 51 million shillings. What happened to us? Because in 2013, when we lumped together the youth ministry with public service, the whole resources were channeled to National Youth Service. And then we forgot about the other core functions that are affecting the youth. This department has moved with 8 PSS within 10 years, Mr. Speaker. And so it has not had a proper institutional memory of implementation. Mr. Speaker, that is one area that we must fix the resources. Number two, there is a program, luckily, Mr. Speaker, that is supported by the World Bank, that's called Nyota. Its intention is to make sure that it reaches 19 years old up to 28 who have not gone past Form 4 in terms of recognition of their skills, improving of their skills, and attaching them to a specific work environment, and thereafter supporting some of them to do businesses. Mr. Speaker, that program is huge. It's about 20-something billion shillings in 5 years. I am going to be prudent in terms of managing and making sure that it achieves the objective of reaching hate across the country. I ask members of parliament that we work together to make sure that the identification of the beneficiaries is per constituency, because the constituencies are the most equitable units at the country. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, we must do, and I was prepared to do that in the roads ministry, we must do what President Roosevelt did. After the Great Depression, between 1933 and 1938, President Roosevelt came up with something called the New Deal. The New Deal was to work on deliberate mechanism of finding jobs through government projects for young people. And the plan was to make sure that when they were building the beltways, the airports, the postal corporations, the bridges, they made sure that they infused in the contracts the number of young people that are going to be employed. I will suggest, Mr. Speaker, that in our road contracts, if you give a contractor, say, 100 million worth of a contract, we must tell that contractor, infused in this contract, you will employ 100 youth equality for 3 years. And we must be deliberate, even if it means adding the amount to the contract of and above. If we do that, Mr. Speaker, in railway contracts, in the port contracts, the airport contracts, road contracts, we are going to deliberately deal with the people of Kenya. If we are going to give out contracts to everybody to maximize profit, those people will use machines. What has happened, Mr. Speaker, in places like Kericho? Because of the introduction of machines, there are so many jobless young people in Kericho and other places like Limuru and other tea growing areas. We must tamper the need for profit by deliberately getting a new deal for young people in this country that are going to get jobs directly. The last thing I want to say is that there are fragmented initiatives that target young people. You will find that the AGPO, the program that is ensuring that contracts go to young people, is being managed by Treasury. There, the Treasury only see the registration of the company as a young person. They don't even realize that this young person is just a facade. You have another initiative in ICT that is called Ajira. You have another initiative in Public Service Commission that is called internship. So all these initiatives are fragmented. What we are going to do in the Ministry of Youth, if I'm approved, is to make sure that there is oversight. These all initiatives across ministries are going to be reported to the Ministry of Youth so that we can collect them and we make sure the oversight and make sure that we force all government ministries, departments, and agencies to make sure in their performance contracting they report annually how many youth are benefited from the programs and with clear statistics of where the youth are found. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Honorable Raso, I agree with him that what kind of study are you going to build in different parts of the country, and we must make sure that is why the absence here is the disjointed relationship between the national government and county government, because there is no intergovernmental framework under the law that makes sure that we work together to establish those. Make sure that I follow up personally. I was really wishing to go to Marsabit as a Minister of Roads and Transport because we have some airstrips we were working on there, and also we are open to the Lapset corridor. We want to put ICD there. So, Mr. Speaker, I will go now. I will go now, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of this ministry, if I'm approved, to make sure that the stadium is completed.
We want you to shift your heart from roads to youth and sports if you are confirmed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but as a cabinet secretary, you still have the responsibility of supporting
I know there is
the rest of government.
Responsibility, but don't live in nostalgia. Let's have now. Yes, Junet.
Point. When we are looking at the suitability of a nominee, we also look at his commitment to the work he's going for. So I wanted to ask, your removal from roads transport to Ministry of Sports Youth, do you see it as a demotion?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, there is a committee of ministries. Mr. Speaker, when I was in roads and transport, I never at any point thought that my colleague in youth and creative economy and sports was a lesser minister than myself. So I don't see any ministry to be different from the other.
Shuria?
Thank you,
one
Honorable
question,
Speaker.
Mishi, one question, Rahab,
Yes.
one question.
Thank you. Let me just add, as everyone was talking about Stadia, Mheshimiwa, we don't have any Stadia in Northeastern Province, 0. So you better add that into your list. There's no sports.
Mishi?
I think we do better than, I haven't even asked my question, sir. My question. That was just a comment.
I told you to preambles to questions.
Mr. Speaker, if everybody spoke for their reason, and I don't say I'll be killed once I leave here.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa Murkomen, youth employment and job creation. Matrix requires concerted efforts, including mainstreaming of the issues in all ministry policies, rather than youth ministry as a standalone solution point. So what is your take and what measures will you champion to achieve this mainstreaming in all ministries to push the agenda of youth? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Mishi.
Asante, Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti. Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti, nimemsikiza Mheshimiwa Murkomen ambaye pengine anaweza kuwa waziri wa vijana na michezo. Lakini nataka nimregeshe nyuma wakati akiwa waziri wa mambo ya barabara na uchukuzi. Sisi kama watu wa Likoni, kupitia bunge niliuliza swala la kivuko cha Mtongwe na tukaweka pesa ambayo ilikuwa ijenge kivuko cha Mtongwe cha feri. Ramp hiyo ilijengwa kidogo tu, yani kama mbeni mfano tu wa kujenga, baada ya kuweka mamilioni ya pesa. Mpaka leo ferry channel, kwa wale ambao hawajui Kiswahili, Mtongwe ferry channel, mpaka leo kivuko kile hakifanyi kazi. Wakazi wa Mtongwe wanataabika sana kuvuka kwenda katika ng'ambo ya pili. Vile vile ile floating bridge ambayo ilikuwa pale iliyotengezwa kwa milioni 300 ilikuja ikakatizwa kwa ghafla bila kuita wananchi kuwaeleza kumeenda vipi ama kumekwenda vipi. Sasa mimi nauliza, umezungumza maneno matamu ya kumtoa nyoka pangoni, lakini kusema sio kutenda. Unaweza kusema na ikawa ni mkono mtupu au rambwi. Mimi nataka nimuulize waziri, utatutibishia vipi ya kwamba haya ulioyasema hazitakuwa ahadi za urongo kama zile ulizoahidi kupitia wizara yako kwa watu wa Likoni, na mpaka leo wanalia hakuna floating bridge, iliwekwa wakati wa regime ya nyuma, sasa hakuna tena, kivuko cha Mtongwe hakuna. Mwisho tupe tathmini ya talanta hela. Asante mwenyekiti.
Oka amekatalia pangoni. Yes,
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, to the nominee, I don't know whether you are aware that most of the constituencies, we don't have youth officers for the last 5 to 7 years. And I'm sure you need those youth officers because they'll help you to go on the ground and do mapping and know exactly what is happening on the ground. Honorable Speaker, I've also received another question from your friend, going to do to gain their confidence, your youth. Thank you.
First of all, youth, no, I agree first that there are no studies in the, as I said earlier, in the arid and semi-arid areas. When I was doing the tournament last year, Mr. Speaker, Turkana players were playing on a sand pitch, Mr. Speaker. It's very disheartening to see how marginalization is being perpetuated, and I think we need to correct that, to give facilities to young people in the arid and semi-arid areas. And I have been deliberate, even in the Ministry of Roads, to make sure that arid and semi-arid areas are also taken care of. Mr. Speaker, on the to be confined to youth department or the youth ministry, it is a mainstreamed issue across the board, and that's why I said earlier that the youth ministry itself should provide oversight whether the other departments of government are achieving the objective of creating employment and creating opportunities for young people to do business and making sure that they are given access to have a voice. Mr. Speaker, part of those initiatives that were done after post-election violence by the second term of President Kibaki was to have a National Youth Council, which has never been operationalized up to now. I participated in the youth agenda in the whole conversation about how to operationalize the National Youth Council. I want to promise the people of Kenya that we are going to give the young people of Kenya a voice to elect their own leaders from grassroots national level, so that then the objective of National Youth Council is going to be achieved, where they will have their own leaders elected by themselves. Part of the reasons why young people are in the streets protesting is because they feel that they are not being involved in decision making, or they have no voice, they have no channels of releasing that which they would like to give to the country. And I don't want tokenism in this case. They must also be part of the decision making. Mr. Speaker, when I got any opportunity to appoint board members in the previous ministry where I was, Mr. Speaker, without being nostalgic, I made sure that youth were in every agency that I appointed. In fact, in some of them, like the Kenya Railway, there are more than 2. If you go to Kenya Ports Authority, we appointed a 26-year-old board member. And these are big corporations that people think that young people should not be sitting there. I made sure that there was a deliberate effort to mentor. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Mukame has asked a question. can the youth of Kenya trust me to lead them? They should trust me because of my track record. My track record, Mr. Speaker, in the previous ministry speaks for itself. My track record as a senator speaks for itself. My track record as a mentor. I have mentored people, Mr. Speaker, who have become members of parliament.
That is what you started with.
Leaders and MCAs. I know, but the question was asked that how do they trust me? They should trust me because I have mentored young people until some have accessed higher positions of governance in this country. And if they got a minister that they should be proud of, and they will be seeing it is Kipchumba Murkomen.
If you are confirmed.
Yeah, if I'm confirmed. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Honorable Mishi, ningependa kusema
ajibu Kiswahili kile sanifu watu wangu pia waelewe.
Bwana Speaker, tumetenda
Kiswahili sanifu or the opposite?
Bwana Speaker, tumetenda kazi nyingi sana katika poti ya Mombasa, na nilianzia hapo awali wakati niliposema tumeimarisha biashara katika poti ya Mombasa. Sasa hivi uongozi wa poti ya Mombasa mkurugenzi,
kwa nini hukumaliza kivuko cha Mtongwe?
Ndio nakuja
kwa nini floating bridge ilitolewa?
Ndio ninasema hivyo Bwana Speaker. Kuimarisha utendakazi katika poti ya Mombasa ilikuwa pamoja na kuondoa ile floating bridge yenye ilikuwa pale, kwa sababu ilikuwa inapoteza masaa 8 ya biashara katika poti ya Mombasa. Ukisikia kwamba biashara kwa poti ya Mombasa imeinuka, ni kwa sababu tulitoa zile vikwazo ambazo zilikuwa zinatufanya tusifikie malengo yetu kama wizara ya uchukuzi. Na kwa hivyo kuna mara nyingine lazima uhakikishe ya kwamba unaangalia faida yenye inatokezea kwa watu wote wa Likoni, sio wachache. Ya pili, Bwana Speaker, tumeharakisha ile barabara ambayo ni Southern Bypass yenye inaweza kufukisha wananchi kupitia Dongo Kundu bila kutumia ile bridge. Ya tatu, Bwana Speaker, nilisafiri na Mheshimiwa Rais tukahakikisha kwamba tutaanzisha ile bridge ya Likoni Bridge, mpango kubwa sana ambayo itabadilisha maisha ya watu ya Likoni na Mombasa. Na kwa hivyo Mtongwe Bridge ferry, Bwana Speaker, kweli ni kweli kwamba tumeanza kazi, na ninaamini ya kwamba wale wamebaki pale watahakikisha wamemaliza yenye imebaki. Bwana Speaker, nakubaliana na Mheshimiwa Mishi kwamba kusema si kutenda, na ni ukweli kwamba Bwana Speaker, nilitenda mengi bila kusema. Ni wazi ya kwamba wewe na naibu speaker Mheshimiwa Gladys Sholei mlisema wazi ya kwamba makosa kubwa ya serikali hii ni kwamba hatujatangaza vilivyo yale yote ambayo tumetenda. Kwa hivyo, kwa sababu nimepata nafasi hii, hayo ni baadhi ya mambo ambayo tumetenda katika wizara hiyo. Bwana Speaker,
mwenyekiti.
Bwana Speaker,
mwenyekiti, nataka hapa ieleweke, kwa sababu huu mradi wa floating bridge haukufanyika kitambo, na ukumbuke ulitumia milioni 300. Sasa ukisema muliitoa tu kwa mambo mengine wakati ilipokuwa inatekelezwa, hamkufikiria hizo milioni 300 za Wakenya zimepotea tu kiholela.
Bwana Speaker, ni kweli kwamba tumepoteza milioni 300, lakini tumetengeneza bilioni ngapi? Tumeongeza faida ya poti kwa bilioni 10. Ukilinganisha
faida au
mapato tuseme, but it's faida because it's the difference between the 60 billion we raise and the amount that is Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to call it profit, but if you really want to call it profit, it's profit by 10 billion shillings. And so to chase 300 million at the expense of 10 billion, it was a wise decision to make sure that you do away with that floating bridge for the benefit. Mr. Speaker, Mheshimiwa aliuliza talanta hela.
Yes.
Hii ni kusema kwamba tuko tayari kubadilisha talanta yako ikupatie hela, na ni kwa njia nyingi, kwa kuweza kuanzisha katika mashinani yale miradi ambayo yatahakikisha kwamba kuna mchipuko, Bwana Speaker, ya michezo hali mbalimbali, pia ya kuhakikisha kwamba tumeleta teknolojia kusaidia kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya ambao wako na talanta wanaweza kutangaza talenta yao na kuweza kupata hela kwa mifuko yao, Bwana Spika, kulingana na ile bottom up economic transformation agenda ya serikali hii. Bwana Spika, mwisho ningependa kusema yale maswali ya Mheshimiwa Rehab Mukami, that we don't have the youth officers. It is true. As I told you, the youth department has been neglected. And even where we have youth officers, they are not utilized. Because if you have 51 million to run your core projects across the country, it is evident that you are not going to be able to utilize those people. There was a request already that has been made to Treasury to support programs for youth. And also because of this Nyota program that we are going to start, we will need these youth officers in every constituency to be replaced and to be supported to make sure that they can do the work that they need to do. What are you giving to do there? To gain the confidence, Mr. Speaker. There is no other way. There is no other way of gaining confidence except to work.
I've already answered that.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
We're going towards the end. Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Murkomen, I just want some undertaking from you. One is the World Championships, which were held in 2025 in Tokyo, was supposed to actually have been held in Kenya, but we lost the bid because all our stadiums, including Kasarani, did not meet the international standard. Right now, because you're building, the stadiums are being refurbished, assure us that you will ensure that we bid for the 2027, or 2029 or 2032, at least in our lifetime, because it was sad that we actually lost this. Also, and I will volunteer to help you do the bidding documents, because I'm good at that. Number two...
In what capacity? He has not been confirmed.
As a pro bono, if he's confirmed. Pro bono if he's confirmed. Also, one other suggestion, the reason why Nigeria, Nollywood, is very successful is because they have a law that provides that 70% of their content in their local television stations are local. That's how Nollywood grew. Also, there is a question here by a Gen Z. Let me just look at that question. Okay, here. I have a message here that says, please ask the incoming Waziri, what is his plan on ensuring that there is no gap of miscommunication or disconnect between the government and the youth Gen Z and Gen Alpha?
1 or 2 months, Mr. Speaker.
Deliver the infrastructure we have talked about to the standard required, we should be able to hold. You remember? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me start by, yes, I agree with Honorable Cholet that, Mr. Speaker, we should be holding world championships. You remember we held the was it under 17 or under 20? Yes. Most of those athletes, under 20, and we were in Kasarani, and most of those athletes now are at the Olympics. Mr. Speaker, I believe that if we deliver the infrastructure we have talked about to the standard required, we should be able to hold it, to host it at the next available opportunity. And I want to thank the Honorable Cholet that should I be confirmed, she will also be willing to support, Mr. Speaker, and that is patriotism. That's an act of patriotism. And number two is that this law, I know we have a policy in Kenya, I think it was put at the time of Honorable Tuju, if I'm not wrong, that says 60% of the content should be local, but as a policy, as a directive. But I think we need to move it to law. So when we are revising because we have now a draft creative industry bill and policy, I think as we move to that direction, we should include that in the bill. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Cholet also has talked about communication and reaching out to the younger people. I want to confirm that, Mr. Speaker, I will make sure that I work with the young people, and I will, resources permitting, and it's my wish that I get somebody to work with me who is at the age of what is now called Gen Z or Gen Alpha. That group, Mr. Speaker, who are in their 20s to 30s, Mr. Speaker, I would like to have one of them work in my office office, but also I like to make sure that the internship programs that we also have in the government, some of those who will intern within the ministry to intern in my office, so that they can also help me build my capacity among young people, so that I continue benefiting from the benefits working of these young people. By the way, I want to assure our young people that they should not fear anything about. I am very enthusiastic about sports and youth, and that, Mr. Speaker, is important to make that assurance. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Junet has asked a very pertinent question. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to say this. Mr. Speaker, I am not arrogant. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I am as gentle as a dove. For those who know me, who are my friends, they know that I cannot hurt a fly. Mr. Speaker, I have many friends in this parliament. They know me. And I have many friends who I've worked with. The problem with public service, and particularly if you have been a politician, you are always around here confronting challenges. And sometimes when you speak in a particular manner, it's concluded that that person is arrogant. Mr. Speaker, I am not. And as a Christian, I should not be containing arrogance. Number two, Mr. Speaker, on the question of opulence, Mr. Speaker, I must say this with utmost respect. I do not know even what opulence means, Mr. Speaker. And let me say this. I take it to mean that people who are opulent are the ones that bask in wealth and modern things. You will see them exposing where they are with their families, where they live, showing which car they drive, and all that. Mr. Speaker, I just became a victim, unfortunately, of a crossfire, of a conversation. On things, Mr. Speaker, I do not go anywhere to announce to somebody that I wear this, I do that. It's just that some pictures take something you wear, and this, that, Mr. Speaker. Ultimately... And
you spoke carelessly somewhere.
Ultimately, Mr. Speaker...
In some radio show.
It wasn't careless, Mr. Speaker. Ultimately, yes. I was asked in a radio show a direct question. What is the most expensive shoe, tie, watch you have ever worn? Mr. Speaker, I had two choices. You didn't know it was a trick? No, it's not a trick. Even if it was a trick, I had two choices. Either to lie or to say the truth.
Or not to answer.
Mr. Speaker, no, let me just come to that.
That was the third
Mr. Speaker, I would have refused to answer, but I also had the opportunity to say the truth. And by saying that truth, Mr. Speaker, having been put that question to me, Mr. Speaker, it was not by my own choice to go and say, and Mr. Speaker, you know, for me who has grown up as a son of a squatter in Embobut Forest, you know that even when we were growing up, if you get one shoe or one watch like the one I got when I was in primary school, that is your Sunday best. That is your Sunday best. It's that one expensive thing you have that sometimes you are happy with. But to say I'm opulent, Mr. Speaker, I must say this with utmost respect. I have never gloated anywhere about anything I wear, anything I have, Mr. Speaker. Even where I live, Mr. Speaker, I've never gone to announce to people that I have this kind of a house. Or, Mr. Speaker, I've never even bragged about the car I drive, even if all those things could be more expensive than the things that have been mentioned. And I have said this, and I say this when the president nominated me. There is a verse in the Bible that says, if your eye is going to hurt a neighbor, or your hand is going to hurt a neighbor, you better gouge it out so that you don't make your neighbor to sin. And I say this when the president nominated me, that if in any way I behaved either by speech or conduct or my lifestyle, Mr. Speaker, in a manner that hurts any Kenyan, I apologize profusely. Mr. Speaker, that I said, and I mean it. I mean it as a Kipchumba, and I mean it as a Christian. That if I had, and Mr. Speaker, to demonstrate my commitment, Mr. Speaker, if any Kenyan tells me tomorrow that you can only wear butter shoes, and it will help me, Mr. Speaker, I'm being very honest, that if you wear only butter shoes, it will promote us to focus on your job and to hold you account on your job, Mr. Speaker, I'll do so. Because I do not want anything to distract the people of Kenya from the things I do. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, this is the conclusion, having managed, Mr. Speaker, a ministry that has so many agencies and a huge budget, I am extremely proud as Kipchumba Murkomen